Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Alberta Sequeira, and we're here tonight to talk about the effect of alcoholism on the whole family, and that includes the addicted. How many times have we heard our loved ones say, "I don't know why you're picking on me. Everybody's doing it. It doesn't affect anyone but me." But let's think about it. Who does it affect? It could be a lover. It could be a spouse, a parent, a child, a sibling. We can even go as far as saying grandparents, aunts, uncles, nephews, nieces, cousins, friends, and co-workers. The addicted get so caught up in their own life, not that you want to put guilt on them, but they don't really stop to think how many people love them, and they're suffering just as much as they are. I am also here tonight to introduce my new book, What Is and What Isn't Working for the Alcoholic and Addict in Their Own Words. This book was written by 34 alcoholic and drug users. And what they're trying to do is show the world what they believe themselves, what has and hasn't worked for them in their recovery. We will get a little bit deeper into that when the other speakers talk. But before I introduce some of the contributors we have, I'm very honored to have two of them tonight. I have a few others that I want to introduce. The first one is my husband, Al Sequeira. He's hiding in the corner at the table. And his sidekick is my best friend, Rachel Constant. They're there for anything that you need help on the table. I have some free articles, and under the poster you'll see by the doorway, there's some pamphlets that I bought from Al-Anon and also AA, so feel free to help yourself to any of those. But another person I want to introduce, I call her Miss Piggy, but the library calls her Petunia. And she lives here at the library, but she's always hungry. She loves the green money, and she loves to swallow coins. And as much as I joke about it, these are the donations that help the director of the library to put on events like this for nothing for all of you. And if you actually come in and study to see what Olivia Mello, the director, does for our children, it's amazing. The activities and the entertainment that she gives to them is something everybody should really take a look at. So if you find a day that you're bored, you don't know what to do with yourself, and you live in the area, come in and visit them. I'm sure she'd love to meet you and see exactly what's going on in all the different rooms. So I'm going to give, call her Miss Piggy, to Rachel. And if any of you can afford to give a few cents, she'll have it right by the door on one of the tables. Now what I'd like to do is move on, because 2 hours is going to seem like nothing, and introduce my first guest speaker. He lives right here in Lakeville. He is also an author and speaker like myself, and he has put his first book out called The Constant Outsider. It's a memoir of his life owning a gas station in Boston years ago, and it was during the era of the mob and crime. But what fascinated me with this book is he had a few moments that he was bumping into Whitey Bulger. So I think you'd enjoy the book. But then what he did, which was fascinating, is he took his memoir and he turned it into a fictional, and he called it 67 Cents. So if you get a chance, his books are also on my table. But right now, I'd like to introduce Tom Serenano.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to say something that I've never said to Alberta, but I've been wanting to tell you. I am honored to be your friend. And this lady has really dedicated herself to trying to get the word out and actually save people from experiencing the same kind of personal loss that she so openly shares, and you'll hear about that later on tonight. And her husband also, he should be the poster child for spousal support. This guy, well, no matter what she wants to do, he's there lugging stuff. I mean, it's really amazing to see. As for me, I got a call from Alberta one night, and she says, hey, I'm writing a new book, and I'd love to have you contribute to it. So I'm all excited. That's quite an honor when somebody does that. I says, oh, that's really good. And she says, the title of it is, What is and Isn't Working for the Alcoholic and Addict? In their own words. I was taken aback, and I was actually very defensive, because I have never thought of myself as being an alcoholic or a drug abuser. But then I remembered, Alberta read my memoir. She knows my history and some of the stupid things I did in my younger days. So I didn't accept her invitation right away, but I thought about it a few days, and then I says, you know something? Maybe she was right in asking me to contribute. Maybe I could. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stories in that book about some crazy things that were alcohol-related, actually. This was really my first nice automobile when I was working at the gas station in South Boston. And when I was about 16 years old, my story is just like a lot of other people. I started drinking in order to fit in with the local gang that was the in crowd, and I wanted to be one of them. And I knew that if I wanted to be one of them, I had to start drinking. Nobody in my family drank. So I started drinking, and I started smoking pot. Don't tell anybody. And it actually worked. My tactic worked really well. I was accepted into that group and became one of them. And it was the first time in my life I actually felt like I was part of a group. And then working in South Boston, there was another instance where I really wanted to fit in with the locals. And every corner had a tavern on it back in those days. So I said, well, maybe the same tactic will work here that worked in my home area. So I started hanging around the local taverns. And maybe if one of my customers had a car that was being dropped off, I would bring it to the tavern, have a few beers with them. And I was accepted as one of those people too. And it was a wonderful feeling. What I didn't know was that there was going to be some side effects of that. The first side effect was that car there taking down a telephone pole with the driver's door, a direct sideways hit. Snapped the pole after I had been out upset over a breakup, had too many drinks, and just went crazy behind the wheel. And I was so lucky that I didn't kill anybody that night, because I crossed over the other side of the road. The pole I took down was on the left side of the road going around a corner. And I had to be taken out through a shattered window opening, because none of the doors would open, of course. The car looked like a totem pole. I wish I had taken a picture of it now. So that was my first little side effect of being with the in crowd. Here's a car that I was very proud of. I bought that brand new. It was my very first brand new car. This is taken from the front of my shop in South Boston. And looking down the street, on that corner was a tavern. You can see the red frontage of the building down there at the far corner. So after work, I would just walk down there, have a few beers with the guys, play some pool. Well, that car met the same fate as my Eldorado did. A direct driver's door hit, took down another telephone pole. Again, upset over a relationship problem. Too many bottles of MD 2020. Anybody ever have any of that? It's not good. But, again, I was one of the lucky ones. I didn't kill anybody. I would have been doing this interview from prison right now if I had. So I'm not proud of these things. But this is why Alberta called me. She says, you know, my point is, you don't have to be a textbook definition of an alcoholic to have a drinking problem. If your actions, just that you drink once a year, if they endanger the lives of other people, that's a problem. You can ruin families. I mean, we've all seen it. We all read the news. And hopefully that, you can be spared that. So that, I had to be taken out through a smashed window on that car too. Motorcycles and drinking, not a good combination. One night I was again, I'm smiling because I can smile. This could have ended up in tragedy too. I met a girl at a bar in Braintree, and I wanted to impress her. So she says, geez, I'd love to take a ride on your motorcycle, but I gotta be home by midnight. This was like 25 minutes past 11 in Braintree. I says, I can take you for a ride, and I'll have you back here by midnight. She was all ready to go. And she loved speed, too. She loved the fast driving. So I left Braintree. I drove all the way into Castle Island in South Boston. Stopped, got off the bike, had a cigarette, got back on the bike, and had her back in Braintree in 35 minutes. I know, it seems impossible, doesn't it? But I had to be doing 110 miles an hour all the way. Now, what if that young lady, what if we had a mishap? I wouldn't have cared about myself as much as ruining her life and her family. Again, I was just lucky, and I impressed her. Boy, did I. Oh, just while I have this, go back to this other picture for a sec. That tavern down the corner, you can see it was Gavin's Tavern. That's the name of the tavern there. I would walk down there and I'd play pool. One night I was in there, and I always found out when I switched from drinking beer to drinking vodka and grapefruit juice, bad things always happened to me because I wasn't usually somebody that drank hard stuff. So I'm shooting pool in there one night. It was probably 11, 12 o'clock, almost closing time, and these two strangers came in, and they wanted to play for money. I didn't know who they were, but other people in the bar seemed to know who they were, because if you were a stranger, you weren't welcome in these bars. So I started playing. I couldn't lose. We're playing for $10 a game or whatever. Suddenly, I start hearing some wisecracks from these two guys. You know, like, this guy's a hustler, and he's a a-hole or whatever, you know. And so I kind of, maybe I'm not hearing this right. After the second or third time I heard that, I mean, money was piling up in my pocket. This guy said it again. I just turned around, put the cue stick down on the table, and I hauled off, and I hit this guy as hard as I could. Then I got a cue stick across the head. But when I came back, I blacked out. I had beaten these two guys, and they were being taken out the front door. And I was being restrained by the bartender because I was just blacked out of my mind. I just started swinging crazily. So the bartender says, "What are you, crazy? What did you do that for?" I said, "What do you mean, what am I crazy?" He says, "Do you know who those guys are?" I says, "No." He says, "Those are two of Whitey Bulger's bookies from the West Side. You better get out there and apologize right now." And I did. I went out. It was pouring rain. And I tapped on their window, their white Lincoln Continental, and the window opened this much. I said, "Look, I'm really sorry, you know. You just shouldn't have called me names. It's only a game." And they just drove away. Shortly after that, I was down at that tavern, and a car pulled up, a white Corvette pulled up 5 minutes after I left. A guy got out with a machine gun and just riddled the whole bar from outside in the middle of the street. Miraculously, I must have been like the only person in there that, at the time, because nobody got hurt. But the whole front of that bar was riddled with little holes where the bullets all went in. And I'm not saying that was because of me, but it could have been. They could have come back for revenge. I mean, I was told that some other gang wanted to take over the gambling operation in that bar. But that could be another reason that they wanted the gambling operation. But my point is, I'm not normally that type of person. I don't go around taking a swing at people. It was only because I had liquid stupidity in me. Now, Alberta, I don't want to go to that one yet. Alberta, when she asked me to come up and speak, she says, yeah, and when you're getting ready to be finished, if there's any advice you could share, that would be the time to do it. My advice that I would share is, when I was 16 years old, I would come home plastered in a household where nobody drank, and nobody ever said a word to me. I think parents run around with blinders on. Their kids can do no wrong, and they look at their kids doing drinking or whatever, and they feel that it's just, oh, they're experimenting, it's harmless. And nobody said a word to me year after year when I came home plastered. I mean, I'd be bouncing off the walls. Night, Ma, good night, Dad. And nobody said a darn word. If they had taken me aside and says, hey, come here, this is not acceptable. You cannot come home like this. It might have made a difference, and it might have saved me a lot of grief and a lot of automobiles. So my advice would be, take the blinders off if you have a spouse or a child pay attention to them, because there are signs. I mean, when you knock pictures off the wall when you come in and, walking up the stairs, that's a sign that you're not normal. When I was dating my wife, my friends told me, when you get married, everything changes. And I says, what could change? We've been living together for 3 years. What could possibly be different now? Well, my friends were right. As soon as that ring went on my finger, I came home from Southie, from playing pool until maybe 1 in the morning, walked in, and my wife says to me, what are you doing? You can't come home like that anymore. I says, oh my God, my friends were right. I said, what do you mean I can't come home like this anymore? She says, you're not just living for yourself anymore. You're living for us. And that's what she said to me. And you know something? She was right. It really, I was playing Russian roulette. In fact, another gentleman that's going to come here in a little while and talk, one of the favorite quotes out of the book that he contributed was that playing with alcohol it's not exactly the way he said it. It's like playing Russian roulette with live ammunition. I mean, how many cars can you total? How many rides home at 2 o'clock in the morning can you make before you kill somebody? You just can't go on like that. So, anyway, what she said to me, that it wasn't acceptable anymore, it meant something to me. And it did make a difference. I haven't had a ticket. I mean, I have stacks of tickets I saved as a hobby when I was single. Because I said, this is cool. I can keep them all in a little, booklet. And I have them. I have pictures of them in my book. Driving to endanger, running a red light. I got 2 tickets within 5 minutes. But anyway, I haven't had a ticket, a car crash, or anything. And we're celebrating our 30th anniversary this May. So the influence of a good person that says it's not acceptable behavior, it can make a difference. So pay attention to your family members, people you love. There was an old guy that hung around my gas station. He was 99 years old when he died. But we used to drink at the garage, after the end of the day, we would be drinking beers. Customers would pick up their cars. They'd have beers with me. And old man Tony, he would say, when you drink alcohol, take 2, no more. That's the best advice that anybody like me that's an occasional drinker, I can drink and I can walk away from it. I'm an occasional social drinker. But I try to limit myself to 2, and it's the best advice that if you're a social drinker, after 3, it's kind of hard to say, geez, I don't want any more, So that's some of the advice that I have. And the last thought that I'd like to leave you with is, I read Alberta's book, and I read all the contributors. And when Alberta put together the candid stories of 34 contributors, what she created was a message of hope and of help. And I hope that some people in here will benefit from that. So with that, it's my pleasure to bring Alberta back up.
I was going to introduce my second speaker, but he's not here yet, so I'll try to fill in the spot because we want to have time so we can ask questions and mingle in, and you can enjoy yourself with pastry and have all the calories you're not supposed to have.
Yeah.
Then I look at alcohol abuse, drug addiction, something that I never thought would ever affect my life. In fact, believe it or not, when I was a teenager, I didn't even know anything about it. I came from a very close-knit family. My father was retired one-star brigadier general in the Army. My mother was the type that stayed home and greeted us every day. I had my usual fun that we had years ago, not what kids do today, but I still had that fear. I didn't want my parents to know if I was going to do something. So I thought this just bubble stayed around me and I'd never be affected by anything like this. It always happens to somebody else. But I realized I was affected by it. In 1985, my husband, Richard Lopes of North Dighton, died at 45 years of age at the VA hospital in Providence, Rhode Island. And I would say it was from all his years of drinking alcohol when he was only a teenager. And I listened to him at the time when we dated talk about how aunts and uncles would drink and how he would be scared and hide in the bushes. And he had become the same thing. Now this disease trickled down. I call it hereditary and always will because of this. It trickled down from his mother, his siblings, his aunts and uncles, his own daughter, and his niece. As for my daughter, Lori Cahill, she also was 37 years old for the first time that we found out that she had any problem at all with alcohol abuse, because she admitted she was admitting herself into the Gosnell rehab. Now, she had a son that was Joe Cahill, who was 18, and a daughter, Megan, was 17. Neither of them had any idea, living with their mother 24/7, that she had a problem. That's how well an alcoholic can hide it. But she entered the Butler Hospital in Providence, Rhode Island once and twice to the Gosnell in Falmouth. But while she was in there, she went into where all her veins were starting to break. And she was literally hemorrhaging from her rectum, and she was rushed into the hospital by ambulance. But while Laurie was in there, for 3 weeks, the family lived like we all do on hope she's going to make it, then she's not going to make it. She's going to make it, she's not. But 2 days before Thanksgiving, in 2006, Laurie went in a coma from hemorrhaging again. We had to put her on life support. But what happened after the life support, we had to make the decision which no family wants to make, and that's taking your child off it. So on November 22nd, 2006, 2 days before Thanksgiving, Laurie passed away at the Charlton Memorial Hospital. I watched my daughter take her first breath, and I watched her take her last, holding her hand in a cold hospital. After I lost 2 loved ones from this horrible disease, I had all the overwhelming questions that all of us have. Why didn't I? I could have. What if? But I think the most painful one was when my other daughter, Debbie, and I decided we didn't know what else to do with Laurie. She was living with Debbie. And then we decided we'd put her out on her own. Pardon me, but the AA expression, they have to reach rock bottom. And we knew she loved her 2 children more than life itself. She was a fantastic mother. So we thought this will straighten her out, but we forget as families, no matter how much they love their families, they go for the substance abuse. But I couldn't help wondering, what else could I have done to save my daughter? The right side of me looked at it with logic. I did the best I could with what I knew at the time. But on the left side, where your heart is, where your heart beats, where all your love is for your child, I was so overwhelmed with the emotional fact I didn't do enough to help her. So last year, sitting by the computer, I started wondering, because Laurie left and so did Richie, what questions we all have and we're left with, we never get answers to. And I thought, why is it that some alcoholic and drug users can recover and put their lives together while others die from this horrible disease? And I started wondering what gave them the physical and mental strength to fight the battle and come out winning. So I didn't know where to get the answers, and all of a sudden it just popped in my head, I'm going to go to the source. I'm going to ask the alcoholic and drug addicts. They know, we don't. So I put an ad on the internet called The Reporter Connection, and I let people know that I was writing a book, and I would love anybody who was willing to open up and talk about the privacy of their life and what they thought worked and didn't work for them in their recovery programs. I had 34 substance abusers reply back, and they were, believe it or not, all excited. They couldn't wait to tell their stories. I had to turn others away. But I'll tell you why I want a lot of testimonies, not just one or two, because my other 2 books that I wrote are just a memoir about my life, but I needed more. But when Al and I had gone to Butler Hospital to see Laurie, she said one day to us, you know, Ma, I just listened to a man in his 70s talk for over an hour. I had no idea what that man was talking about, and I couldn't even relate to him. How many times when Laurie was in a rehab that I had prayed she would hold on to somebody and say, I can do that too. But it never happened for Laurie. So after her statement, I knew that I needed multiple substance abusers to tell their story in different stories. I didn't want them to be the same because we're all not the same. So I figured if I had so many of them, if any of you pick up the book or an alcoholic or a family member, you're going to read that book, and out of 34, God willing, you're going to find one and say, that's me. That's our family. So I needed a book with answers, with all the questions that were driving me crazy and keeping me in guilt. Well, that's how I came to write what is and what isn't working for the alcoholic and addict. I thought if I had all these questions, there had to be other family members who are suffering with an alcoholic or, God forbid, had lost them and they have the same questions. Let's face it, there are doctors and counselors that are trying, I'm talking all over the world, this is not just the United States, we all know that are trying to find answers, not just how to get this disease under control, but also to find new ways of finding ways to help them. But each year, I find you keep reading and you see that the death rate, instead of going down, it's going up. So there's something we are not doing correctly to help these poor people. But here is a book, What Is and What Isn't Working for the Alcoholic and Addict. Hopefully, will give all of you support so that you will read it and realize what they are looking for support from the family and new ways to help them. But you're going to learn, and I find this very important, that childhood emotional wounds are what mold us into adulthood. And I could go on for 5 hours probably telling you what went on behind closed doors in my family to relate to that one remark. But I had sent these contributors, God bless them, 21 to 23 questions. Here I was a mother. I wanted all these answers to these questions. But some of them, to give you an idea what's in the book, is what age did you start drinking? Are there or have there been other family members that are on alcohol or drug abuse? Did any of them die from it? Why did you use drugs? Why did you start drinking? What was the reason for it? And what gave you the strength to want to recover? And do you want or do you think that doctors and counselors should look at more why you're drinking and using, more so than the disease. And I guess you would say my most important question I had for me, selfishly, was what would you tell parents and siblings and friends and anybody who loves you? What can we do to help you? What is going to get you out of denial to want the recovery? Well, I'll tell you, some of them believed in AA and sponsors, and some of them never even walked through their doors. And a high percentage, which me being spiritual, I'm very proud of, a lot of them believed in turning back to their faith no matter what it was and turning back to God. But the main goal of this book, the substance abusers want to do, is to reach other substance abusers and let them know that you can do it. You can recover. But they also don't lie to you in this book. I didn't change any wordings that they had. This is their story, not mine. So they wanted you all to know what they lost going through this addiction. Almost all of them had to start right from the beginning. But the reason I wrote the book and put it together is I'm hoping this book saves other families to go through the stress not to go through the stress that I went through, because I ended up having a small breakdown. I had pushed my mind and my body beyond what it could physically and mentally take, trying to control an alcoholic. So I want you to read this book and learn what the addicts actually need. You will come out with the reality, whether you're the alcoholic or drug abuser, that it's not that you may, could, or would die. You are going to die. If you don't put your life together and you add on years of drinking, your organs are going to shut down. But my own personal feelings are that the addicted suffer from deep-rooted problems that are bothering them. I failed as a parent in many situations that I believe today, looking back, that I could have prevented. I could have handled differently. But I was too young at the time, and I had no idea what all this confusion, fear, and abuse was all about that was happening in my family. And of course, from pride, I hid it. I didn't want anybody to know. Back in those days, even if you were divorced, it was terrible. Nobody wanted you to know that you were divorced. So how am I going to tell somebody I have a husband that's abusing me? And I didn't even turn back to my parents that might have helped me. They never even knew what was happening. And you know, the sad part is my daughter was living with a boy who was abusing her, and she never told me until she left him. So when we live that way with our children, they feel like they have to live the same life. But I want to list some topics. I talk about them in Someone Stopped the Merry-Go-Round and the sequel, Please God Not True. And the reason I'm going to bring them up is you're going to realize when you read this new book that they are answering these topics that I have. To me, these are all the things that I did wrong, not having the knowledge that I have today. And the first one is I think as family we should get out of denial. We are just as much in denial as the alcoholic. We think, like Tom was just saying, our kids can't do any wrong. Well, no wonder Bill's that way. Look at him. I mean, he's hanging out with Jack, and he's such an alcoholic. He's just following him. Well, look at Betty. No wonder she's that way. All her friends go to the bar at night, and they drink. If they weren't hanging out with them, they'd be fine. No, it's not that. It's them. We all have choices. I couldn't say that about Laurie when she was alive, and it's still hard to say because I want to look at all of you and say, well, of course Laurie couldn't make it. She was too sick. But she had a choice. I didn't want to accept that at the time. And I'll tell you something else. I'm not very good with names. My husband and I were watching this program about a month ago. It was about this great football player. He had fame, he had money. but he was into alcohol and drug abuse. He finally went to a recovery program, and it showed him talking to teenagers about his life. And he said something that I swear was embedded in my mind. He said, "Show me your friends, and I'll tell you your future." And that, I'm telling you, that remark, "Show me your friends and tell me your future, I'll tell you your future." Now that my daughter is gone, of course she hid a lot from me. But if you have a child that's using drugs or drinking, look at their friends. Take the time to find out who they are. Another thing is the enabling. I could have won first prize for that. My God, I didn't want anyone to know my husband was drinking, because if he stopped drinking, then you know what's going to happen? They won't know, and they'll know what a good guy he is. But he was an alcoholic. And what happens innocently when we keep enabling our loved one is we bring them deeper into their addiction, not meaning to. And what happens from there? You stop them from their recovery. Alcoholics are smart, intelligent, skillful people in knowing how to control every person in the family. And what's remarkable, while you're doing everything in your power to show them you love them, they have a way of turning it around that you're at fault. Well, if you didn't do this, if you didn't do that, I wouldn't be drinking. It's your fault. And of course, this sounds crazy to say to you. You're going to really think I'm crazy. I thought because I didn't keep the house clean enough. After I vacuumed, now this is how sick I was. I wet my fingers and I'd go around the edge and then get the vacuum. Maybe I didn't have the house clean enough. But that's what they do to you because we allow it. But I also say stop the threats. How many times would you say, if you do that one more time, I'm kicking you out? You do that one more time, I'm divorcing you. You do that one more time, I'm calling the police. You do it one more time, I'm taking the kids off you. And what do? Nothing. You're in such fear that you're going to lose the person that you love. You use any tactic at all just to get them to stop drinking. And meanwhile, you're doing the opposite. But I would say that if you make these threats, the only thing that's going to work is action. It's what they talk about with tough love with kids. You have to do the same thing. We're so afraid that if we have tough love, that what we're going to do is have them think we don't love them. You have got to push your emotions aside. That's what blinds all of us. And if you're going to tell them you're leaving, especially in a situation, I would say with an abusive person. I talk all the time mostly about the men, but let me tell you, this is men and women and children, so it's not just when I mention a man. If you're going to kick somebody out of the house, make sure you have a restraining order. Make sure you don't kick them out or tell them you're going to kick them out until you have a place to go to. And even go further if they're abusive, is have a police officer with you so you can get your things out. But if you decide you're going to stay and kick them out instead of vice versa, my next advice is make sure the next day you have a locksmith there and you get all your doors changed with the locks. It may sound silly to you, but when you get someone abusive and they've been drinking the next day and it's been boiling up to them that you've kicked them out and taken the kids off them. You didn't, they did, but that's how they look at it. You have got to protect yourself and you have to protect your children. And I'm ashamed to say that's another thing I really didn't do with my daughters. I kept them in that atmosphere for a good 10 years. But don't break down when you get a restraining order and let them back in. I did it 4 times. And one day he picked up my daughter and he went to take her away while he was drinking in his van. And I'll tell you, he could have taken off with her, all because I broke down with a restraining order. There's nothing wrong with having a restraining order and being separated and saying to them, you're not coming back for a good year until you prove to me or to yourself you want to be sober. And people a lot of times don't want to separate because they're afraid they have to divorce. You do not have to divorce. There's nothing wrong with a separation. Go to counseling together. Go to counseling separate. But don't fall for, well, you've got them out, and boy, I passed all. I can go check, 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 check. I've changed, honey. Wow, I've been off drinking for 2 weeks, 2 months. I miss you. I miss the kids. The kids need me. You're at fault. You're taking the kids off me. How mean can you be? Kids do not need that kind of life, and they do not need that kind of love. Protect your children from the substance abuser. Don't protect the substance abuser and let the children suffer. Get professional help as soon as you see there is a problem. If something doesn't look or seem right, find out what's going on. And I also say take time to listen to the alcoholic and drug addicts. Sometimes we're so wrapped up with being scared with our own feelings of losing them. All we do is the yelling and the screaming. And sometimes all they want is an arm around them. You know, it's very easy to look at someone and say, I love you. I can look at a friend and say, I love you. And I mean it from my heart. I love you. Your kids hear it. But what they need is for you to show them you love them. How? Go to counseling with them. Go to doctor's appointments. Listen when they're trying to say something to you. Instead of coming home and you're cooking, they're talking to you, and you're busy and you're running around, you don't want to bother. Listen to your children. Communication has to stay open. See, I've learned to understand with an alcoholic. They look at drinking as making them feel better. It's a blessing to them, not a curse, and it's medicine, not poison. In a few hours of drinking, it makes them forget about their troubles, their fears, their tension. It removes all their loneliness, solves all their problems. When we as family know that everything they're trying to make them relax, the drinking is making all these problems come. And don't believe, and they have to reach rock bottom, because Richie and Laurie's rock bottom was their death. Let them know that it's the disease you hate, not them. And there's nothing wrong holding your child and saying, I'm scared to death I'm going to lose you. Because now you're showing them you love them. And some topics people don't like to talk about, I say turn back to your faith. Turn back to God. We have all taken him out of our lives. And when you read this book, what is and what isn't working for the alcoholic, you're going to see how many of them have turned back. And stop trying to drive yourself nuts, saying, I'm going to control this person. I'm going to make him better. Now, as sick as it sounds, again, I'm talking a lot of things bad with me. I honestly believe that God put me on earth to help Richie and save him. Now, you know, when you're emotionally trapped into these feelings, this is what happens. But I want you to know where Laurie's children are today. When Laurie died, my daughter Debbie and her husband Brian took Joey and Megan into their home. They have 2 children, Kerry and Megan. Michael and Kerry. And they're all, the 4 of them, around the same age. Well, last year, Joe got out of the service, the Marines, and he was in Afghanistan, and I thank God he came home safe to us. Megan, she graduated from college, and she's going for her master's degree in psychology to help the addicted. And Laurie would never believe that her mother stands up here, who used to be petrified to talk, and is trying to help others. But on December 18th, last year, my husband Al and I met with Senator Michael Rodericks from the Bristol County area trying to find ways to modify the Patient Privacy Act. I'm not saying change it, to modify it. And we want it modified for the alcoholics, the drug addicts, and the mentally ill. We want family members to have more authority to get involved with anyone 18 years and over, even if they don't want you to. Now, somebody who is an alcoholic or drug addict, that is a very powerful remark for me to say, and they're not going to agree to, which I don't blame them because everybody wants their privacy. I respect that. But Laurie had reached the stage where a doctor told her she was at a life-threatening stage and her liver was ready to shut down. And if you have somebody that has been admitted time and time and time again, and they show no desire to want help, well, I think, and so does Al at this time, that they're not in the mental state to make any healthy decisions with their life, and I see nothing wrong with family trying to help. All the counseling Laurie had, no one had the answers that were eating away at her than what I had for her. For those of you who are here tonight fighting alcohol abuse and drug abuse, I just want to take a moment to talk to you. I want you to hold your heads up high, and I mean that sincerely. There is nothing wrong with you except you have a disease. It's the disease that's making you say and do the things that you do. And I think a lot of times society makes you ashamed. You wouldn't be ashamed if you had cancer. But the sad part is if you know it, you don't want to do anything about it. You have to get professional help. There are millions of addicts that are walking this world that will never be lucky like some of you, that have family that loves you, that has rehabs to go to, doctors and counselors wanting to help you. And let me word it this way. It's going to sound cruel, but say you're in a car accident and you wake up the next day and the doctor says to you, I'm sorry, but you are paralyzed from your neck down. You're never going to walk again. You're going to have somebody help you with your bodily functions the rest of your life. Or what if you've been suffering for months and you get the results back and the doctor says, I'm sorry, you have cancer, you're going to die in 2 months. These people cannot do a thing with their faith, but you can. You have to want it right here. You have to want it more than life. You have to take your loved ones and your family and push them aside and make yourself number one. If you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to make it. You'll be another Richie and Laurie. This is your battle. You've got family to love and support you, but you have to do the work. To me, there will always be 3 reasons why I believe why people are drinking and using drugs. First of all, I believe sincerely it's hereditary to some of you. The second one is our young children today want to fit into the crowd. Everybody's doing it. Why are you picking on me? I can stop any time. Oh, it's just a stage. All the kids in college are doing it. But what they don't realize, you don't realize, is now you're doing it because it's fun. Because Laurie said to me one day, Ma, you'll never believe this, but the best time of my life is when I was drinking. I said, to you it was at the time, but look what it's done to you. So you have to look at it that sooner or later you're going to drink because you want to, but then there's going to come a stage in your life that you're going to drink because you have to, because your body is going to want more to feel better. But all the kids, I don't know what it is about you. You hate to have people making fun of you. But I also believe the third reason, and I think it's number one, is alcoholic and drug addicts have very deep-rooted problems. And instead of facing them and getting professional help, what they do is it's too painful. I remember Laurie talked about the pain of losing her father, but it was near the end of her life. I never even knew it bothered her. I forced Laurie into an abortion she didn't want at 17 because the boy didn't want to marry her. And then 8 months before Laurie died, she hinted something happened with her and her father, and she couldn't talk about it, things I have to live with. So that's why I believe a lot of our children, and parents don't like to hear it because we don't want to feel that we did something that might contribute to it. But we can innocently with what we decide to do with our kids. Laurie just could not open up to counselors about it. Instead of handling the problem, she actually died from it. To me, you have to open up, and I call it get the garbage out of you. If you don't release all that hurt and pain that you're going through, you're not going to recover. And you also have to learn to forgive. If somebody hurt you from the past, let it go. Put it in God's hands. Because why are you going to let somebody who was more sick than you, that did something to you, prevent you from having a healthy life that you should be having? I have been asked even tonight, if I learned something after publishing this book. I have learned, and I didn't want to face this until this book was written and I had all the alcoholic and drug addicts telling me. I learned that no matter how much I yelled, demanded, threatened, begged, punished, or cried, that no substance abuser recovers unless they want to. All we can do as family is give our support and show our love. Be there for them. And I'm going to end with a picture I'm going to have Tom bring up in a second. All right, that's all right, he did. I wanted this picture up because we can talk about the pain we're in, the pain we get when we lose a loved one, whether it's a husband, a wife, a child, anybody that you love. That's the pain of it. That's showing you the pain, not telling you. Laurie was buried at the St. Patrick Cemetery with her father. We had her name put on his tombstone. And I'll tell you, it's very painful to go up there and see the both of them know they both died from substance abuse. And so many times, like my husband Al says, such a useless death. Because we know all they have to do is grab onto that help and make it. But it doesn't happen that way, and I hope to God that this book helps everybody. Read the books. Learn what the alcoholic is feeling. We need to know what they're feeling to try and help them. So I'm going to end right now because I want to introduce my next guest that popped in secretly and is hiding. If any of you want any water, I just want you to know there's water over there. My next guest speaker is host to the WBSM radio station out of Fairhaven. All you have to do is turn that dial to 1420 a.m. And Monday through Friday from 3 to 6, I guarantee you're going to be entertained by him. He has laughter all the time. I walk around with a big smile while he's talking, and he has a big heart where he helps anybody who wants to promote himself. I know he's been wonderful to me. He's also the owner of the Charlotte Diner. I would like to present Phil Paleologos.
Hi, everybody. At AA meetings, we start off at the podium by saying, "Hi, my name is Phil, and I'm a recovering alcoholic." Oh, there are some of you who get it then. Ah! Hi. How many of you have been touched by addiction in your family? Raise your hands. How many of you have not been touched by addiction in your families? 2 out of the entire group. We have a cancer in our society. And like Alberta said, this disease needs to be dealt with. But how do you yell at an earthquake to stop shaking? So many of our loved ones who are addicted definitely were not, I don't think, born to be addicts. When they were little, learning to walk, they were beautiful children. When they went to school, they did everything that other children did, but somewhere along life's course, they chose one way, others chose another. Yesterday in New Bedford, 3 individuals, 3 human beings, died from an overdose of heroin. Now, you know, in these days, it's very difficult to connect feelings with statistics. But if I said to you, your niece died suddenly yesterday, all of a sudden there is a personal attachment. Or if I said, oh, a friend of yours died yesterday because they stuck a needle in their arm, but the amount was just too strong for their bodies. You know, the recent death of the Academy Award-winning actor Philip Seymour Hoffman did a couple of things. One is it reignited this national discussion about a disease that has affected, as is apparent here, 99% of us, some way or another. And yet, what do we get out of when we hear headlines out of news stories like that? We get to the point of almost putting up walls and compartmentalizing ourselves from what we can do, what we should be doing. And that's why I'm here tonight, because the most difficult part of life is families who are affected by addiction, working as a family, helping the addict. There are so many dynamics to it. Is the addict ready to quit himself or herself? Is the addict going to continue one day at a time to live? There's just a lot of dynamics involved here. What I have learned, and I've been in recovery for 30 years, is that every day is a new day. There is no such thing as getting better sobriety if you have 30 years compared to one day. So with that in mind, I went over my 30 years, and I tried to figure out, why did I get sober? What was the difference between Phil Paleologus stopping all of the things that I was doing, the behaviors that alcoholism and drug addiction bring with it, and you know the behaviors. It goes from everything from lying and stealing from your loved ones to being dishonest and hating yourself. I mean, you can't exactly love and honor somebody else if you don't do it for yourself. So what created a difference between Phil getting sober and Alberta's beloved daughter and former husband dying from the disease? You know, it's a powerful question. What distinguishes those who make it and those who don't? And the title of that book, I think, is very, very meaningful. I came to one conclusion, because I believe there are many answers. Just the way in life there are a lot of different approaches with one thing in mind. I fell in love, like Alberta's daughter, with the feeling of getting high. I really enjoyed partying, laughing. You know how it is when you have a few glasses of wine and you're just nice and mellow. I mean, I did not start out life intending to be an alcoholic or a drug addict. I just wanted to fit in with all the others. So at 16, that's what I did. You know, if they were smoking pot, I would take, a joint and smoke it along with my friends. If they were drinking beer, me too. And it wasn't something out of the ordinary, but I wanted to fit in, and before you knew it, I really felt comfortable, not only with the feeling of getting high, but I got comfortable with the feeling of being high and now working with a microphone or whatever it was that I was doing. I was feeling more and more comfortable being in an altered state of mind and working my daily chores. And I protected this almost as if it was a jewel that I wanted to, preserve. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't detected, that I could have a few drinks during the day and feel good and yet work my job. It wasn't long, though, before others started noticing. It's always the others who notice first. It's always mom or dad or the family members, and it always comes down to, unless they're somewhere out in La La Land, the employer. I mean, there isn't one employer that I've spoken to who has dealt with people who have alcohol or drug problems who didn't know it or who weren't aware of it. And so these are the most important people who can really make a difference in the alcoholic's life or in the drug addict's life by confronting them and saying, listen, you do have a problem. And if you don't confront the problem, you're going to have that problem outside of our employ. So when that kind of an intervention happens, the addict feels, A, that he or she was discovered, and B, therein lies a lot of emotions, because we want to preserve the right to be independent. That free spirit ends up many times leading us to the edge. And the edge for me was many times coming this close to dying in accidents, creating accidents in automobiles, doing things that were completely opposite of who I really was as a person, how I was brought up. And by the way, I was brought up in a religious family. My father was a minister, my mother a nurse. Nobody in my family had a drinking problem or drug problem, so I was the anomaly. I was the only one with blue eyes in the family, too, so maybe that explains it. However, the point that I'm getting to is I found one answer to the question of what worked for me. And after I fought going into getting help, after I faked with my wife going through the process of getting help, I would go to counseling. In my mind, I would be saying one thing, the tape would be rolling, saying, oh my God, I can't wait to get out of this damn place. And on the outside, I'd be, what happened was when I went away to Edge Hill, Newport, a small miracle happened. I went away only because my wife said, well, I can't say that really. I found my underwear and socks out on the lawn of my front. I couldn't believe it. All of my underwear? When I went to Edge Hill, the nurse said, "Why are you here?" I said, "Great question." I said, to be honest with, can I have an honest talk with you? She says, "I wish you would." I said, "I'm here because I'm pleasing my wife." Oh, okay. In those 30 days that I had absolutely no intention of changing the behavior, I had no intention of changing whatever. The miracle that struck me was I started to like the idea of taking my first step towards a sober life. I didn't want to admit it to anybody, but it felt like a natural, good thing. I felt good after a few days of not drinking or popping pills or snorting cocaine. I started feeling even better after a couple of weeks of real good meals, putting on a few pounds, taking my vitamins in rehabilitation, listening daily to other people tell stories, and being detected for who I was at the time. You see, I couldn't BS my way out of those environments because the people around me were pros just like me. I might have been able to get out of it with my wife or my friends or whatnot, but not in that circumstance. Fast forward a few years, and I realized that if I didn't fall in love with the struggle of getting sober the same way I fell in love with the feeling that alcohol and drugs did to me, that it was going to be very difficult for me to really find sobriety. Because I could put down something, but it doesn't mean I'm sober. I can walk away from something for a while. It does not mean I am sober. Sobriety started to take on a brand new meaning. I, for the first time, started to understand that it was okay to embrace the authentic me, who I really was. It was okay for me to fall in love with the good things that sobriety brought. It was a wonderful feeling for me to grow at a time that I really didn't have any idea why I was doing it. But I feel as though divine intervention puts us on a path. And if we're open to it, if I don't put up my blocking, the light, so to speak, if I'm open to it every day, it seems to give me life and lift. It seems to also put me on the right track, because every day I ask God, point me in the direction you want me to go, help fill my heart and my head with the wisdom of what you want me to say. Who do you want me to address today? And I will be there. And this kind of approach to life has distinguished why some of us make it and others don't. Why did I choose that? I don't know. It was a grain of a miracle that happened to me. I can't speak for anyone else, but I can tell you this. If you don't fall in love with the struggle of it, if an addict or an alcoholic doesn't embrace the hard work that it's going to take daily, because we're tempted every day. There's a temptation there. If we don't stay true to that falling in love with the struggle, meaning I want more of growth and less of what I was doing, then it's going to be very, very difficult for any of your loved ones. You're going to feel upset because you have no idea what to do to help them. If you're enabling them now, it's going to be even worse because they just won't be able to get it. And there's nothing more frustrating to a parent, to a loved one, to a wife or a husband, and I'll end with the children in a moment, than not being able to come into that person's light and help that person out. The children of our country, as you see with societal problems, our culture has deteriorated to where every day it seems as though something else happens and we shake our heads saying, how can this be? We're almost desensitized to the insanity. Things that our kids are doing were once reserved for psychotics. And they're doing it now as kids. This is part of it. Our kids are in a sea of this kind of addiction, temptation, lifestyle, decisions that are going away from culturally what is good, and of course, turning our backs on whatever spiritual force is in your life. All right? It's either one direction or the other. And it seems as though our children, because of a lot of us, are going in the other direction. You see it in our schools. You hear it in the discipline of our kids in the country, how they talk to one another, how they are with teachers. All of this disrespect is a culmination of how we as a family, as an American culture, it is our impact on them that is now coming out. And we're getting a lot of what we sowed. So my greatest thought and my greatest dream for all of you who are here tonight is that if you cannot tell the addict or the alcoholic how important it is to fall in love with the struggle, to make sure that they feel that it's going to take a lot of hard work and sweat, because nothing comes easy. It's going to hurt. It's really going to play on their discipline. It's going to be a lot of work to get sober. But this is how it's going to be done. Nothing in life that is very important happens very easily, and neither does sobriety. I thank you, and I leave you with all of my love.
I want to thank Phil and Tom sincerely. It's not that easy to open up about our past, and it's not about us tonight. I know they feel the same way. We want to try to help. We have to talk about this more openly. We have to stop making the alcoholic and drug abusers feel ashamed. That's my opinion. Any of you who would like to have me talk at any of your events, see Rachel and Al, they have media kits that are made up already with my background and whatnot. I'd love to talk at any event you have. So does anybody want to start asking a question to anybody here in the committee here? You all must have questions. Go ahead.
Good evening. Tough, getting old. Thank you very much for this presentation. I appreciate the three of you. And I do have a couple of questions, if I may. Tom, is it Tom? Yeah. The way I understood it, you got, what is going on?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to ask this question? Is that a sign? Oh,
I did. I got married. Yeah.
You got married 30 years?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you were able to stop drinking the day after you got married? Is that
Well, no,
right?
I made it very clear that I'm still a social drinker. I've never considered myself an alcoholic.
Okay,
What I do is I try to live by the take two, no more rule,
okay,
because I think that's
good.
a good way to be a social drinker, and
All right.
maybe I'm in denial, but I don't think that I'm.
Well, after listening to the beginning of your story, I can tell you one lucky dude, I'll tell you that much.
I am, and I know that every day when I get up.
Now, Beretta, can you tell me that
Turn the
your
volume down.
husband or your daughter, did they get a chance to attend AA?
Yes, she did. In fact, Al and I went to a few of them with her, but, because like I said, parents want to be in control, and I'd walk into the AA centers and I'd be upset because I wanted the people who were running it, sponsors, to greet my daughter because she was new there. And Laurie just wouldn't connect to anybody. Now, that's just our opinion. We thought that maybe if someone made her feel, see, another excuse family gives, but that's how you feel. She went, but she never really connected to anybody. It was either she went to get us off her back, or she just really, at times, Laurie admitted she'd like to drink.
Okay. And you, if I may, did you ever attend Al-Anon?
Yes, I did. More so when I was married to Richie, and while we attended along with his brother Sonny and his wife, he was out drinking. I went for 4 years until I finally had a small breakdown, and I knew I was just could not do anymore.
And one thing, from everything I've heard tonight, I feel, because of where I am in my sobriety, I feel that everything I heard tonight can actually be heard in the halls of Alcoholics Anonymous, with the exception of one thing. I heard you say that you don't have to reach the bottom.
Rock bottom.
I disagree with that statement. I think every alcoholic does reach their bottom. You know, it depends on how far down you want to go, but it's not that you want to go, it's how far down you go. And ultimately, and you know, my sincere condolences on the death of your husband and your daughter. And so, people out here in the audience, they're looking for hope. There is a lot of hope here. I intend on buying a book. I'll read the, what is it, how many people's?
What isn't working for the alcoholic and addict?
34.
Stories. How many,
Oh, 34.
34.
And see, that's why I have so many, even listening to you.
Pardon me?
That's why I have so many with the testimonies. Listen, even an example as you are speaking right now. Say everybody in this room was an alcoholic. Each of you would feel differently about your attitude with drinking, what works, what doesn't. That's why I wanted so many, because some people did it on their own, some needed professional help. There's all different stories because you are all doing the same thing, but you may come to the result differently. I mean, do you feel the same way?
One last thing, and then I'll sit down, and I'm sure everybody will be happy about that. But
Oh.
you mentioned on one occasion about that you have to reconnect with your higher power or spiritual. That's what I find in the AA, that it's not a religious program. A It's a spiritual program, and one for the AA, my family, and reached my bottom, and a Catholic priest that helped me years ago. I wouldn't be standing here tonight. And the whole situation is whatever you state, whether you're here for you're an alcoholic, you're not an alcoholic, you struggle with it, the whole thing revolves around it. You were right, Phil, is it? Yeah. The country is in a moral decline, and if it wasn't for the grace of Almighty God and all His disciples, my dad, I wouldn't be here tonight, and probably all of us wouldn't be here tonight. There's a reason why we're all here, and I hope to hell everybody can leave the hall with that answer. I appreciate listening to me, and I'm sorry I took up so much.
Thank you so much.
No.
Thank you for your sobriety. Yes.
My story is a little bit different. I'm kind of with Alberta when she talks about the lifeline and how it kind of the trickle effect. My mother was an alcoholic, excuse me, and I married an alcoholic. And my daughter is now married to an alcoholic who's an abusive man. I went through the same thing. But I guess my worry is now I don't want to see her name on a tombstone. And she has divorced herself from the family and is no longer involved because she doesn't want to hear anything that we have to say. And she is in denial, and she believes that her husband's going to get help. But we have found out that it's not the first time it's happened. And I guess at this point, when it comes to just, my daughter, how do you live with this? And what do you do to help when they're far away and you know that?
Myself, I would say, as I've said, keep communications open. Don't judge her so much, just my way. I pray to God for a lot of things that happen in my life, put it in His hands, but let her know that if she wants to call you, she's not going to listen to you going down her throat. That's the only way to put it.
Right.
Why are you still with them? All the cutting him down, even though you want to, because you're fearing you're going to lose her, especially with an abusive husband. But that's what I would say is, let her know when she calls you're going to be loving. Just let her know, I'm here if you need me, if you need a place to come, that's it. And that, to me, is the best you can do. I mean, does anybody else feel differently?
Well, I don't know if it's different, but we transfer a lot of our ills onto our children. What happened to us as teenagers, we're ultra sensitive about, so it doesn't happen to them. And they pick up on this like sonar. And so their basic reaction is going to be just after a while, okay, Mom, I've heard it. I know, please. Alberta's so right. The power of prayer is just as powerful as any other power there is on earth. So always keep her in your prayers, but let her know that when he steps beyond that line, that you're always going to be there to support her. And if he should, that you would hope that she loves you enough to turn to you to say, I need your help, I need your love, I need this, because he's going through it again.
Yes.
Thank you for your wonderful presentation. I've been a volunteer for men's and women's prisons for 25 years. And drug addiction and alcoholism is incredibly rampant. There are so many inmates that have said, if it wasn't for prison, they would have overdosed. They have AA meetings in the prisons. I'm there for a group called Toastmasters, teaching public speaking. And within their speeches, they talk about how their families got destroyed, the families that they destroyed, the people that they destroy, the people that they've killed. It's absolutely amazing, and thank you. This needs to be brought out more and more, and people need to admit to themselves, I am an alcoholic, or I am a drug addict. Or if you know somebody within your family or a friend, please try to get them some help. Because I'll tell you this, prison life isn't fun.
I'd like to, I don't want to change this going on with questions.
Thank you.
But those of you who don't have questions because it's getting late, I want you to relax. Help yourself to some coffee and help yourself to some dessert. Just do it a little quietly because I think it's important that we keep the questions going. And if we keep the questions going, you're not going to have time to go out. So help yourself to coffee, there's soda, there's water, and there's a lot of pastry.
I don't have a question, but I have a statement that my husband mentioned Al-Anon. That was my saving grace. It taught me to let go and let God. It taught me that it wasn't my fault, and I didn't cause it, and I can't cure it, no matter what I did. I could sit and hold my breath until next year, and it still wouldn't have gotten him sober. So I had to let go, and that was such a relief for me to realize there is nothing I can do, so who do I have to take care of? It's myself. And by doing so, I took my eyes off him, and he went down a long way, and I couldn't do a thing to help him but let him go. It was
Yes.
the hardest thing I ever did in my life. But thank God, he met his bottom that way. It didn't kill him, could have.
Yep.
almost. But he's a day at a time.
Yep.
Where he is. So that's my tale from tonight that I want to give out. That I just have to no, it's not my fault, and I can't help him as much as I wanted to. I often said, we separated, and I said, if he ever fell dead on the street the next day, Al-Anon helped me come to the realization that it wouldn't have been my fault. My heart would have cried, but like you say, one night, your left side of your heart, my right side would have said, God bless him, I couldn't help him, and I'd cry until.
See, I couldn't let go until I was in AA and Al-Anon for 4 years, till I got myself so drained. My last hope is we had 2 months of counseling together, then 2 months separate. And we got together, he had an alcoholic counsel him, and I had a non-alcoholic counselor. And when we got together, and I'm talking 14 years, and finally they said, well, how do you feel, Richie? Do you feel like you have a problem? He says, no, I don't. It was like someone went over and turned that light switch. I said to myself, and that's still loving him. I said, I can't do it. They said to you, what do you want to do, Alberta? I said, it's the end. And we separated and divorced. That was it. I loved him to the day he died. He was the father of my kids.
You got a gentleman here that has a question.
Yeah,
Yes.
but that's
You have a
when I
question,
let
sir?
go.
Yeah. First of all, I wanted to say thank you for the stories you shared with us. I know it's not easy, but I know that you're out there to try and help everybody. One of the things that you had mentioned, which I strongly believe in, is that you want to make yourself better. If it's not yourself that's afflicted by this, you're just feeling the pain of being with somebody or knowing somebody that has this, how do you encourage them to take that step to want to get better?
That is what a fabulous question, because it gets down to a basic element of, do we really love ourselves? And we cannot help others if we don't help ourselves. You know, the old adage, charity starts at home. If you don't have, and you know, for lots of us in this country, we have been berated. Kids in school at lunchtime today had their heads down in their lunches because last night their father or their boyfriend or the mother was calling her a bitch and was slapping her around and was selling drugs out of the same home. And so the stark reality is many children don't like themselves. there's nothing to like in a world that doesn't have too much love in it like that. So in order to find a real starting place, a foundation, you have to have people around who are going to reinforce in the child, in the addict, or whoever it is, that you are worthwhile. You are a human being. You have a soul. You are, everything that is worth saving. Otherwise, what happens is everything becomes non-relevant, and that's when we all start getting desensitized. Whether it's hearing about shootings or whatnot, we become almost distant from it. And let me end with this. Today I had Professor Waxler, Bob Waxler, and his wife Linda, two highly educated people, wonderful people in our community. Bob Waxler, who's the head of the English department at UMass Dartmouth, brought a prison program in to help these inmates who can't read. They can't read. That's part of the problem. How can you like yourself if you can't read? And if you can't read, you're going to obviously be looked at in school like you're stupid or an idiot. His son, who graduated from Dartmouth High, went to college, had a fabulous career, died with a syringe in his elbow, just the same way Hoffman did. And they couldn't get over it. Why? This kid had everything, but he didn't have one thing. He didn't like himself. For whatever reason, he didn't believe in himself. He just felt broken from everything that they thought they had provided him. So if the person feels broken, we have to mend that first. The halls of AA do it a little bit at a time, because it is what I think was a divine program started, But for those of you who are here tonight because you have somebody, a loved one, who is looking for help, there are so many wonderful resources that you can go to. And I know that Alberta has listed a lot in terms of resources. But you have to start there.
Thank you. Thank you.